Hello, everyone. Today I get to speak with Dr. Melanie Burkholder, Assembly candidate and former Secret Service agent. I hope you enjoy what she has to say. Melanie, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today.
It's great to be here, Nick, and I'm excited for you and the potential that you have for your YouTube channel. It's really exciting.
Thank you. You were a former Secret Service agent?
I was in the Los Angeles field office to early 2000s and protected all of our currency, all of the presidents from Jimmy Carter to Bush 43 in some capacity, and many foreign dignitaries that came into the country. So it was a great experience, wonderful, just expansion of my life knowledge and all of the things that I got to do within the United States Secret Service.
And now you're running for California Assembly.
That's right. So I'm a mental health therapist. I used to be a therapist before I went into federal law enforcement. Now I'm a therapist again, and I have a private practice here in California. My district is actually in North County, San Diego. So we cover the coastal cities of Encinitas, Carlsbad, Inland Oceanside Vista, and Camp Pendleton. And it's just a great, wonderful, beautiful environment that we have up here. Lots of coastline that we want to make sure that we're protecting. And I'm just finding it as a homeowner, a business owner, children that are in the public school system. What's coming out of Sacramento is definitely not helping any folks that are like me, that identify with what I identify with and how our family operates here in North County. So there are a lot of injustices. As you know, probably, Nick, there is a supermajority of Democrats in Sacramento. The seat that I'm running for has historically been a Republican seat. However, in 2018, we didn't have a Republican on the ballot. So you're not going to win unless you have a Republican on the ballot, that's for sure. This district needs to be taken back to the red side, and we need to restore common sense, quite frankly. I said that at a speech I gave the other day, and critical thinking is important, and someone said to me, any kind of thinking in Sacramento at this point would be beneficial. So we're running to put common sense back into Sacramento, realizing that it's not about special interests and lobbyists that have bought my opponent, unions and Planned Parenthood, SEIU, California Teachers Association, dumping a couple $1 million into her campaign for an assembly seat. So we haven't seen that type of money in a race for an assembly seat ever. Typically, if the Democrat Party pours that much in, it's spread through different candidates and leveraged that way. But they are pouring money into her campaign to try to defeat me because they know this is a vulnerable seat. And as a tier 1 GOP seat, we know it's vulnerable for their side. So we're ready, and we've been fighting for a year and almost 9 months now to take this seat back. And I can't wait for November 3rd when the voters get a chance to speak. And hopefully, we'll be able to get a result that day.
Your opponent is refusing to debate you, isn't she?
Yeah, we have called on her several times. We've asked the local chambers of commerce as well to conduct forums via Zoom or socially distanced, and she flat out didn't even respond to those calls. We had my political director deliver a letter to our field office here, and it was closed, and she continuously puts out messages to her constituents that say, come and contact me, we are here working for you. And in fact, that is the opposite of what is happening. I'll just tell you a story, Nick, about my opponent that gives you and your viewers a reference. Okay, she didn't tweet anything on her official account from January until June of 2020. We're in a global pandemic. Unemployment is on the rise. Domestic violence is on the rise. Abuse, neglect, food insecurity. Schools are closed. And she tweets out in June of this year, the first thing, that she was proud of her fish hatcheries bill.
Hmm.
Very, very disconnected with the people in the district that I've heard from that have contacted me, the small business owners, the people that value local control, the people that are struggling with their children at home from school with distance learning. We have seen an increase in Carlsbad Unified alone of over 300% of D's and F's in this reporting period because of the distance learning. So things aren't working swimmingly here. So for her to reference her fish hatcheries bill, I find very short-sighted.
Mm-hmm. The legislature has largely been disbanded. Newsom is operating under emergency orders that he claims have no deadline. He's being sued by two assemblymen now, Kevin Kiley, or I guess he was sued by two
Yeah.
assemblymen, Kevin Kiley and James Gallagher. And I think that was largely done by the supermajority to alleviate themselves of any responsibility of the tough decisions that would have to be made. And if I'm right, then what you're claiming your opponent has done, which is nothing and not even mentioned it, falls right in line with that hypothesis, right? She's not acting, so she can't be blamed.
Correct. And she often doesn't take a vote so that she can play both sides of the aisle on the vote. Quite simply, she's put out multiple slanderous mailers to folks about me in the district, and I get them because I've got Democrats that are on my core campaign team, former Democrats at this point, but they used to
Mhm.
be Democrats, and they get the mailers, they get the information, and they send it to me of what's happening. And conversely, I get what she's putting out in light of how wonderful she is, particularly regarding one issue we have in North County is a Tri-City Healthcare Hospital where we had a behavioral health unit. As I said before, I'm a mental health therapist, so behavioral health is very important to me. We had a behavioral health unit that was working swimmingly with the supervisors, Desmond and Gaspar here in San Diego County, to open up, expand that so that we can fill the needs in this district with the mental health issues that we are seeing with the homelessness and other mental health issues, as you can imagine. Just before this was going to happen, she and her cohort, Nathan Fletcher, put the Tri-City Hospital on notice, meaning that they had to come up with millions of dollars in a 6-month period to raise the ceilings of the behavioral health unit rooms to be compliant with suicide prevention. This was not possible, so the hospital had no other choice but to close the behavioral health unit down. It is a publicly funded hospital. So when she puts out glossy mailers that say that she was on the hospital side and did everything she could to help the hospital, it is disingenuous and misrepresents what actually happened with those behavioral health units. And I firmly believe on the other side of this global pandemic, we will be seeing a mental health epidemic. We in North County, sadly, are already seeing teen suicide attempts, depression, like I said earlier, domestic violence. These are all on the rise, and we just don't have the capacity in North County to cope with that kind of outbreak and that kind of pandemic on the other side of COVID-19. So I'm an advocate to do prevention measures and for people to have the resources that they need. So I think it's, again, very disingenuous that she would put out glossy mailers and things like that that said what a great person she is with regard to how she helped the Tri-City Hospital in particular, because it's just not the facts.
Many people would claim that the danger of COVID-19 is so prominent that drastic measures like this are required. The issue I have with that is the justification seems faulty. The only justification that I could seem to find is Gavin Newsom including in his tweet science in capital letters. I am a scientist, and I do not see how these drastic measures are scientifically based. I've written a long article on my blog about it. So for example, Newsom is limiting the number of families that can get together this holiday season. Does the governor have any right to limit the number of families that can get together, or when they can get together, or where they can get together, or how they can get together?
Yeah, and you mentioned Kevin and James earlier, the assemblymen that are suing the governor because of the overreach of this ridiculous emergency order that he seems to think is like a continuous Sears catalog of Christmas gifts where he can just pick and choose. And now we've got this ridiculous rainbow game of when we can open and when we can't open. And at the end of the day, I'm a Christian, and I think about this people suffering and the mental health implications of not being able to assemble at church where you have fellowship, where you have counsel, where you have friends, where you have comfort in a time when most Americans, most Californians could use that. And so the answer to your question is going to be let's see what this ruling says and where we need to go further, because I'm heavily involved in reopening the Carlsbad schools. And we are to a point where the school board has said they're not going to send our kids back to school until January. This is unacceptable. March 13th of this year, when they shut the schools down, they knew schools needed to be open again. Granted, we have learned more information about the virus and how it behaves, and we know who the vulnerable are. And when you look at San Diego County in particular, we still have not had any deaths of anyone under the age of 20, and significantly increase in that when you go over the age of 65 with underlying health conditions. So what we need to do is have more of a local control approach to reopening the businesses and reopening the schools. I know of small businesses that have closed down permanently as a result of this virus. And, I always say if masks work, then let's open up. And if they don't work, then why are we wearing them? And we need to make the same approach to, I don't know, big business bulk items like Costco, grocery stores, even liquor stores are open. You can get an abortion, but you can't go to church. So there is no common sense of what is open and what is not open and what is considered essential and what is not. Personally, I think teachers are essential. We love our teachers. We want them to feel safe in their teaching and working environment, as well as the students. We want them to feel safe as well going back to school. And I just go back to what you said. You're a scientist, you're a science-driven guy, and you can see that there is no basis for a continued lockdown under an emergency response, an emergency order. And I think, I'm so grateful for fighters like Kylie and Gallagher in Sacramento that will say, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Let's apply common sense to this and let's move forward and do what's right for the people in San Diego County as well as all Californians, because that's not even their district. This isn't even their district. So we appreciate what they're working to that end and how they're working to that end. And I would be doing the same thing. That's why it's so important that we get more of a balance of power in Sacramento so that we don't have what you kind of started off with of these people not voting on things when that is actually their responsibility. You want leaders to make the tough choices. And we've seen that her choice is over fish hatcheries and other environmental issues rather than people that are actually suffering through this pandemic.
Let's talk about all the good stuff you're going to do. Do you have any legislation prepared to submit once you get to Sacramento?
Yeah, Nick, as I mentioned earlier, we are in, Camp Pendleton is included in my district. And what we are seeing is once people retire from the military, because of the tax imposition, they often move out of the state of California so that their dollar goes further. So I would like to introduce bipartisan legislation that would actually relieve the tax burden from these folks after they've done so much to serve our country and the sacrifices they've made. I think that's a really important step, and I think it's a bipartisan effort. Additionally, with my background in federal law enforcement and mental health, I really hope and desire to be heavily involved with the homelessness problem that we are experiencing in North County, which is definitely growing. And I have taken leadership, taken direction from local nonprofits that are actually successful in their endeavors to end what they call the churn of homelessness. And I had an opportunity last weekend to take a homeless veteran, Army veteran John. He needed a ride to the bus stop in Oceanside, and I just happened to run into him. I was like, buddy, what's going on here? He's like, I just need a ride to the bus stop so I can get to my brother. He left my car, and the next 3 days after that, I still smell John when I get in my car. He didn't smell great, but he's a homeless veteran. His name is John. And we need to treat them as well, if not better, as we treat our home pets, because that's what's happening right now. Our governor would rather give illegal immigrants earned income tax credits and, hand out our tax dollars without our vote, without our consent, rather than taking care of those who served our country. I think that's disgraceful. So I would love to have the opportunity once in Sacramento to affect positive change in those two areas.
So Newsom gave away, I think it was $500 million as $500 checks to undocumented workers or illegal immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, he closed a veterans home in Barstow, which would save $100,000 a year. And he claims to be doing so because of the budget. And you seem like you think that was the wrong choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think, actually, I know you can't really take care of anyone else if you're not really taking care of yourself first. So we have all of these really random, wildly created money grabbers, like if you want to think about housing first. So we're going to build houses for homeless people that really can't take care of their skills of daily living. How is that going to pencil out? How is that going to work when we're not providing any oversight or accountability on the part of the homeless person who's now receiving a $700,000 condominium? This makes no sense. So we have what I call a gap in continuity of care. Currently, when you arrest someone, first of all, if they're homeless, good luck arresting them, even if they have arrest warrants, because if they have no place to go once they're processed, then we're not even allowed to touch them as law enforcement. That's thanks to Prop 47 and Prop 57, which is why I am a yes on 20 and would like to stop decriminalizing criminal behavior, because that is what's gotten us into such trouble that we're in right now. Secondly, if you are processed as a 5150 or a mental health issue into a hospital, same. We need a place for those folks to go. We need that continuity of care for them, be it a step down program or a facility, someplace that they can learn basic skills that they need to maintain their sobriety, to use the mental health resources that we can provide for them so that they can be contributing members of society at the end of the day.
You were both law enforcement and a therapist. So you've seen sort of both sides of the same issue. It seems like you're uniquely qualified to try to address this.
Right, and people ask me all the time, what would your plan be? Well, my plan is to get people in the room. It's called a multidisciplinary team. You get them in the room, and they've touched people that are homeless, like John, on a number of different levels. You know, you have your psychiatrist, you have your social worker, you have your case manager, you have your mental health therapist, you have a medical doctor, you have law enforcement. And we have to remember that these are people and not just a label of homeless people. That's the one thing that bothers me probably more than anything, is that each person has a unique individual story that we need to figure out how we can best help them and again, bring them up, not hand out, but bring them up, including accountability, things like tough love. People don't like to hear that term, but if we had more millennials that maybe had some of that going on, they wouldn't feel so entitled right now. I don't know, but I think that this is an important part of what we have to do. We have to teach people that have not had the opportunity to learn those skills, that there is such a thing as accountability and responsibility. And that's, at the end of the day, what brings you to contributing members of society, which is what we want. We want people to be happy and healthy and be, effective members of our community. And I think we can do it. We just have to get some critical thinking, thinking at all in Sacramento, and bring some solid plans to our district. And then let local control decide what they need and what's best for them.
Melanie, thank you so very much for taking the time to speak with me today. I can't imagine ending on a better note than that.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it, Nick. And let's be victorious November 3rd.